welcome to the Bible for worship at St. Paul Lutheran Church on this Reformation Sunday, when our gospel reading is written in John's Gospel, chapter 8, verses 31 through 36. Then Jesus said to the Jews who had come to believe in him, "If you continue in my word, you are truly my disciples, and you will know the truth, and the truth will make you free." They answered him, "We are descendants of Abraham and have never been slaves to anyone. What do you mean by saying you will be made free?" Jesus answered them, "Very truly I tell you, everyone who commits sin is a slave to sin. The slave does not have a permanent place in the household. The son has a place there forever. So, if the Son makes you free, you will be free indeed." The Gospel of the Lord. Thanks be to God. Truly, truly, I say to you. What a familiar phrase, and especially in John. The other three gospel writers record regularly that Jesus says, "Truly, I say to you," but in John, it's doubled. "Truly, truly, I say to you," some 25 times in the gospel. And interestingly, a third of those times, "truly, truly" is spoken in response to a misunderstanding of some kind, just as here. Now, John is a highly stylized gospel. The characters in it are not so much historical as they are what we would call rhetorical or even theological. They represent options for readers as characters that those readers, that means you and me, might turn out to be in relationship to God and Jesus and the world and one another. And in this highly stylized realm of characters that John writes in his story, the Jews are those who don't understand, don't accept Jesus as the Messiah, don't believe Jesus or in Jesus the way that the disciples sometimes do. They're not historical. And here, they don't even entirely fit the pattern of John's characters, the Jews, because these are Jews who had come to believe in Jesus. And yet, Jesus says to them, "If you will continue in my word, abide in my word, then you are truly my disciples." So they had come to believe, but still there's a question about continuing in that word and truly being disciples. And Jesus goes on to say, according to John, "Continue in my word, you will know the truth, and the truth will set you free." And there is where the misunderstanding begins. Freedom, they say. Freedom. We were set free by God from the Egyptians, from Pharaoh, centuries ago. We've never been enslaved to anybody. What do you mean, freedom? And John points to one of the essential characteristics of his understanding of who Jesus is, because he's not talking about a political freedom. And he's not talking about the kind of free will that you and I might think about. John is talking about freedom from the power of sin. You will be freed from the power of sin, to which you are a slave if you sin, and who doesn't sin? So out of this misunderstanding, what truly, truly becomes clear in what Jesus says is two things that we can take away. First of all, the word of Jesus, repeatedly uttered by Jesus in the gospel, is the new commandment: love one another. Everything is wrapped up in love one another. And so, if you would not be a slave of sin, then abide in that word, continue in it, and love one another so that you avoid sin to the greatest extent possible. But we know no one avoids it completely. And so the second meaning here is that the Son sets you free from the power of sin. That's what Jesus' death and resurrection for John are all about. It's what the death and resurrection for us are all about. Yes, we sin, but Jesus sets us free from the power of that sin. And as he says in chapter 12 of this gospel, when I am lifted up, and he means on the cross and from the tomb, when I am lifted up, I will draw all people to myself. The power of sin broken, the freedom of Christ and life in Christ, a gift from God to all of us. God bless.